But if you look at them real close, they were whiter than us a little bit. They were like Casco white. They also had thick eyelids. But they didn't bat their eyes. They didn't close their eyes for moisture. Their eyes,
I remember kind of waking up and not being able to snap out of it. I was kind of just stationary and locked in my own body, and I just couldn't really wake up. It wasn't until really the second.
What did you tell me that night at the party? Because I remember now you saying something was around the perimeter of our house or evil in the house. And he told him exactly what I had just said again.
It wasn't really one of those moments. I kind of stopped for a second while I was falling. It kind of felt in slow motion. Well, maybe I guess I am going to die today. And crash. Everything just shatters.
You wake up and your deceased grandmother is just sitting in the room in the flesh and ready to speak to you. It has to be something very subliminal because I don't think they have
it almost sounded like, I was trying to remember, it almost sounded like metal, like chains on the floor almost. And it kept getting louder and louder. Finally I looked back at my friend Nikki, and she looked.
We as humans don't know too much about reality. Even within the physical realm, there's so much about just this physical, tangible world that we don't know and probably never will know. And I think that there is more beyond the physical realm that we just don't understand.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Welcome to the Brothers Mysterium. I am Tommy.
And I'm Eric. And what you're hearing now is a brief glimpse into our podcast, a show we've put together as a means of exploring, analyzing, and examining the supernatural. Now, I know you're probably wondering, what's the difference between our show and a lot of other shows you see, in which there's guys looking for proof of ghosts or the supernatural or cryptozoological, whatever. On those shows, a lot of those people already classify themselves as believers, and it's just kind of a given. But my brother and I, we're not completely sold on the world of the paranormal yet, and we definitely don't classify ourselves as believers. But that doesn't mean we're not curious. So what we've done for the show is we've put together a series of stories, mostly in the form of interviews, sometimes explorations, and we're going to approach these events from a logical, analytical, sometimes skeptical, but mostly open-minded perspective, and really just ask the question, what could it be? What's behind these paranormal events?
And that's why we're trying to cut out the middleman here. We're only doing interviews with the person who experienced it. None of the hearsay stuff, none of my brother's uncle's best friend, or I remember the story of the guy down the street who had this. We want to go to the people, get their story from their firsthand account, their experience, whatever it may be.
And sometimes we're even going to travel to places, if some place is known to be haunted or has some kind of creepy feature that's worth checking out. And just like the stories and interviews, we're going to analyze it and see what we can do with it.
Absolutely. This whole thing's going to be a journey. You're coming along with us, listening as we find out and discover other people's stories, or we go and experience things ourselves. And it's just kind of the quest for truth.
Right, exactly. And it's important to remember that sometimes the hard facts aren't the entire truth. The truth also includes how these situations affect people emotionally, spiritually, ontologically, which, if you're not familiar with that, that's a philosophy word for analyzing people's beliefs, primarily what they believe exists.
So much is mysterious and unknown in this world, and we just like to get a little bit more knowledge of it, shine a light into that darkness, if you will. And we also have a list of reasons people share stories. So all of these guests that'll be on our show have their different reasons, and we're going to discuss that right now. So let's break it down, Eric.
What I was thinking about when I started to consider all this is, what is the function of a story, or why do people tell stories? And I came up with 4 reasons pretty much. So the first one is, it's a lie. So pretty much the person is seeking attention, or they feel that by sharing this story, they seem special or more spiritual than others. And you've probably all met people like this. And you can kind of tell these types of stories because they seem to be really grandiose in nature.
That's right. I always like to use the comparison. It's like, when you're in grade school, 5th, 6th grade, and there's always that one kid who's always lying, his uncle's best friends with Mr. T, or he's a Power Ranger or whatever. He's got a dinosaur in his backyard, and you kind of know he doesn't. You're like, what, are you for real?
The Power Ranger lie is actually a real thing that happened to me. I did have a kid lie and say the Power Rangers were staying at his house.
See, there's always that one kid, that one person. And even in adulthood, you'll find people who just kind of want attention. I mean, we'll obviously try to filter it. We don't want our show to be full of crackpots, but sometimes it's cool to bring on somebody and let them spew a bunch of BS, then we'll call them out on it.
The second thing is that it's a possible distortion or disinformation or possibly like a false memory. And that would be like a misapprehension, like someone misinterprets what they saw. Perhaps some of their beliefs have altered the memory of what happened. Like if someone has a pre-existing belief in ghosts and something happens that they kind of misinterpret, they assign their supernatural beliefs to that situation. So it goes from something fell over to there was a ghost that knocked it over.
Sometimes there's nothing scarier than one's own imagination. And it's the type of thing where, you kind of trick yourself into seeing things, experiencing things. And then every time you tell the story, you buy into your own story a little bit more until, 5-10 years later, you're 100% positive that ghost attacked you when in reality, it was just some wind or something.
Number 3 is what I call the self-lie. And in these situations, people take completely normal events and blow them way out of proportion and always assign a supernatural cause to it. And these people need to believe because they want the comfort of thinking that their loved ones who have passed on are still lingering, or there has to be an afterlife, and they need things that are outside the scope of everyday reality to give their lives meaning. So they kind of overdo the whole thing and deceive themselves into thinking that there is very obvious proof of the supernatural world that is very apparent to all of us all the time. And again, it's because they have to believe. There's almost an insecurity in their beliefs.
In any situation, you have to have a little bit of objectivity, step back and say, what is this? Those people don't have that.
Right, exactly. So the last one on the list then is that what they say is true. And the events happened exactly as they reported it. And there is a supernatural or paranormal cause behind what they experienced.
Obviously, there has to be some true experiences. Otherwise, nobody would be intrigued by this mysterious stuff, and it wouldn't linger on for so long, and there wouldn't be so many accounts and stories and people out there for us to interview. So, as we said, true accounts, we're looking for the truth. So we're going to try to bring it all together by finding people with legit stories who can share it with us, and hopefully encountering some of our own true experiences with the mysterious, the unknown, and the unexplainable.
Now, speaking about true experiences, which you just mentioned, we feel that to better introduce ourselves, the first stories you hear on this show should actually be our own. So Tom and I are going to share our own paranormal accounts that we've had in our lives. So Tom, do you have any paranormal, supernatural, perhaps cryptozoological run-ins or ghost encounters that you want to share?
No real ghost encounters. I have really only one ghostly story from my own childhood. Started a group called the Monster Hunters. We were not hunting monsters, though.
Was I in that or no?
Yes.
Okay.
And we were basically like just ghost hunting and stuff, which we didn't really, we had like a notebook and that was it at the time. We were in like 7th grade. And we went into a house of a neighbor who was deceased. We went inside, and this was before all these ghost hunting shows, so I consider myself a pioneer in this tactic of screaming at them. So it was me and some friends in a room, and I think you were actually there.
Okay.
So we're in the middle of this room, and I'm saying, "Come on, show yourself, you coward!" And I'm screaming. And all of a sudden, there's this loud wind, kind of out of nowhere, like wind. Door slams. Everybody bolts. I turn to run, but I'm like also kind of excited, thinking like, what happens if that door opens and the ghost of this lady, who I was friends with in life, but I'm now screaming at, what if she's standing there? So I turned to run. I stayed. Nothing happened. Slowly, my friends came back in. I went over, opened the door. Nothing happened. In all reality, probably just great timing and just a big gust of wind. But when I look back, that's the only, I've had friends tell me stuff and everything like that they've seen this or their friends done that. But again, I kind of want to hear it from the horse's mouth. And even in that case, it's nice to hear it. But unless I myself experience something, it's hard for me to put my seal of approval on it.
Just looking back into our own past with ghost hunting endeavors, I don't remember the Monster Club, but
We were the Monster Hunters.
Excuse me, the Monster Hunters. I don't remember the Monster Hunters, but I do remember us getting pretty involved with EVPs at a young age. For those of you who don't know what an EVP is, it stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, and pretty much using an electronic device like a tape recorder, you are able to pick up the voice of a spirit or sounds of a ghost. But anyway, we had this house next door, the same one from Tom's story, where my friend's great aunt and great uncle had both passed away. And we also had a tape recorder. So we thought up some questions questions we knew we would get very specific answers to. That way we'd be able to identify the ghost or know if it was like a demon trying to interfere with what we were doing. And I remember, we would ask the questions and then leave the tape recording and run out of the room. And then we would go back, retrieve the recorder after about 10 minutes. Probably weren't even that patient. It was probably like 3 or 4 minutes. And then we would listen back, and you would hear us stating the initial question. And then you would hear this muffled voice repeating the exact answer that we wanted to hear. And I remember having this feeling deep inside, like, this is it. We have proof of actual ghosts right here in our hands.
That's crazy.
And then it turned out that Tom was actually the last one in the room. He would wait for us to walk out first and then run back in and mumble something into the recorder. And that was our ghost.
I was a hustler, man. You got hoodwinked.
I definitely did, yeah.
And one thing I want to say, we will not be hoodwinking anybody on this show.
No.
It'll all be legit. These are all real interviews, real people. I've even said to people, because we're hitting up our friends and coworkers and anybody, like, do you have a good story? Do you have a paranormal account? Have you ever abducted by aliens? And I'd say, like, probably a good chunk of them have said to me, no, but I'm a good liar. Nah, but I can come up with something. To which I would say, nah, that's a good offer, but no thank you, because we're looking for real legit experiences here.
That's interesting, because actually I found that the more people I ask people, and more often than not, I'm surprised because a lot of people say yes. Now, either that means that more of my friends have had supernatural experiences, or your friends are just more honest.
Yeah, there could be. We'll have to determine that as we progress here.
Yeah.
Next time on the Brothers Mysterium.
It was a solid figure.
At this point, I think I'm going to be like a ghost whisperer or something.
It was quick because once I saw it, I totally myself, ran.
What is that? What was that? What was that?
Thank you for listening to this introductory episode of the Brothers Mysterium, and we hope you'll continue to listen and check out the show.